In March 1996, in Bonnie Lake, Washington, 14-year-old Jeffrey Klungness vanished the same day his mother, Susan, was found brutally slain in their family home. For more than 2 decades, his fate was unknown. Jeffrey Alan Klungness was born on December 9, 1981. He lived in Bonnie Lake, Washington, with his parents, Susan and Ronald Klungness. Physically, Jeffrey was recognized by a slight slouch in his walk, a small but noticeable trait. At 14 years old, he was enrolled in a private school where he performed well academically. Despite his generally mild demeanor, there were signs of internal conflict in Jeffrey's life. His home environment had become increasingly tense due to marital problems between his parents. One particular incident hinted at deeper emotional struggles. During a moment of anger, Jeffrey caused significant damage to his bedroom door, so much so that it had to be replaced. On March 2, 1996, a tragic and disturbing discovery was made in the Klungness family home. That day, Susan was found deceased inside the family's mobile home, located in the 20400 block of East 113th Street in Bonnie Lake, Washington. She had suffered multiple blunt force injuries and was presumed to have been beaten to her end with a heavy object. The fatal blow was to her head, marking a violent end to her life. Her son Jeffrey vanished that same day, adding a haunting layer of mystery to the case. The grim discovery was made by Susan's husband, Ron, who returned home from work between 4 o'clock and 4:30 in the afternoon. Upon arriving, Ron noticed that the front door to the home was unlocked and the television was on, though no one responded when he called out. Attempting to access his bedroom, he found the door jammed and unable to open it. It was not until around 6:30 p.m. that he managed to get the door open, only to find Susan's lifeless body slumped against it. Ron immediately contacted the police, who arrived shortly after to begin their investigation. As the officers examined the scene, they discovered that several personal items were missing from the home. Among the stolen belongings were Ron's gold watch and approximately $700 in cash, leading investigators to consider robbery as a possible motive. However, the presence of the TV left on and the unlocked front door added a layer of confusion to the crime scene. The last known communication with Jeffrey came from a phone call he had with his father at around 9:30 that morning. After that, he seemed to vanish without a trace. Early speculation considered whether Jeffrey might have run away or been involved in the crime. However, the investigators have since ruled out both theories. The authorities do not believe Jeffrey was responsible for Susan's demise. Instead, they suspect that he may have been the victim of foul play himself, possibly abducted by the same person who took the life of his mother. In the early hours of the following day, March 3rd, a critical clue emerged in the case. At approximately 4 a.m., Susan's maroon Toyota Camry station wagon, bearing the license plate number 093GHZ, was found abandoned in the parking lot of a convenience store in Auburn, Washington. Later that same day, Martin S. Malcolm turned himself in to the authorities. Malcolm, a close family friend of the Klungnesses, admitted to withdrawing $300 from Susan's bank account the previous day. Witnesses had last seen Jeffrey in Malcolm's company, seated in the passenger seat of Susan's vehicle. Malcolm was observed driving Jeffrey around, making a bank withdrawal, and even taking him to get a haircut, all while using Susan's car. When questioned, Malcolm claimed that he panicked and fled in Susan's vehicle. His explanation for his actions remained vague and incomplete. He was subsequently arrested and charged with possession of stolen property, resulting in a 45-day jail sentence. Notably, he refused to cooperate further with law enforcement. He hired legal representation, declined to take a lie detector test, and would not provide any details about what had happened to Susan or Jeffrey. Suspicion surrounding Malcolm only deepened as investigators uncovered more about his past. By March 1996, it was clear that his presence in the Klungness household had become increasingly unwelcome. The family had grown uneasy with him, though the reasons were never fully disclosed. Malcolm's criminal background added a chilling dimension to the investigation. He had been convicted of second-degree slaying in 1980 for taking the life of his estranged wife and was released from prison in 1992. Despite this history and the circumstantial links to the case, Malcolm was never charged with Susan or Jeffrey's case, and the case went cold. In October 2017, 2 decades later, a significant discovery was made in the remote Greenwater area of unincorporated Pierce County. While foraging, mushroom pickers stumbled upon a skull fragment and reported it to the authorities. Initially, there were no immediate clues pointing to the identity of the remains, but advancements in DNA analysis eventually changed that. By August 2020, 3 years later, forensic specialists had extracted viable DNA from the skull fragment. Through genealogical comparison, it was confirmed that the DNA was related to Jeffrey Klungness's half-sister. Forensic analysis conclusively identified the skull fragment as belonging to Jeffrey Allen Klungness, who had been missing for more than 25 years. The forensic examination also determined Jeffrey's cause of demise. He had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to the head, consistent with a violent assault. The medical examiner officially ruled that his life was also ended, confirming long-held suspicions that Jeffrey had been slain around the same time as his mother, Susan, in March 1996. Following this confirmation, investigators revisited the primary suspect in the case, Martin S. Malcolm. Given the new evidence, a warrant was issued for his arrest. However, the authorities soon learned that Malcolm had passed away of natural causes in August 2022 in Thurston County at the age of 67. With his demise, any hope of a direct confession or further information about Jeffrey's final moments was lost. The Pierce County Prosecutor's Office confirmed in March 2025 that charges would have been filed if he were still alive. While some aspects of the investigation are still being finalized, officials have deemed the case resolved. Though the suspect would never face trial, the case reached a level of resolution that had long seemed out of reach. In February 2006 in India, a young mother and her newborn twin daughters were found brutally slain in their rented home. The scene was one of unimaginable horror. Despite an immediate investigation and promising leads, the case quickly grew cold and the suspects disappeared without a trace. Ranjini was born in 1981 in Alayaman, a village nestled in the Kollam district of Kerala, India. By her early 20s, Ranjini had entered into a relationship with Divil Kumar, a man from the same village. Divil served in the Indian Army, which lent him a certain standing and respect within their community. Their connection developed over time, and despite the limited details available about the nature of their relationship, it became serious enough to draw attention from those around them. However, the nature of their relationship began to shift when Ranjini became pregnant. This marked a turning point. Upon learning about the pregnancy, Divil's attitude towards her noticeably changed. He grew distant and indifferent, signaling a troubling shift in his commitment. Divil, unwilling to take responsibility, returned to his army post in Pathankot, distancing himself not only physically but emotionally from Ranjini. On January 24, 2006, Ranjini gave birth to twin daughters at a hospital in Thiruvananthapuram. Divil refused to acknowledge the children as his, firmly denying paternity. Determined to seek justice and hold him accountable, Ranjini approached the state government, urging them to intervene. Her efforts led to an official order requiring Divil to undergo a DNA test to establish whether he was indeed the father of the twins. On February 10th, just over 2 weeks after the birth of her twins, 24-year-old Ranjini and her newborn daughter's lifeless bodies were found in their rented home. Their throats had been slit, a scene of unimaginable violence and cruelty. It was Ranjini's mother, Santama, who discovered the horrific scene. Overcome with shock and disbelief, she immediately alerted the police. Police officers arrived promptly at the scene. The immediate area was cordoned off, and the investigation began in earnest. Amid the initial sweep of the home, the officers recovered an RC book, a registration certificate for a vehicle. At first glance, it did not appear to be a crucial piece of evidence. Still, the officers made note of it and decided to trace its origin, hoping it might lead to a breakthrough in the case. Upon tracing the RC book, the police identified its registered owner. When questioned, the individual revealed that he had handed over his two-wheeler to a resale shop located in Srikaryam, Thiruvananthapuram. The police quickly followed up at the shop, where the staff disclosed that the vehicle had been sold to two men. They described one as fair in complexion and the other as having a beard. Though vague, this description gave the investigators their first real lead. Based on the physical description and prior information, the police began to suspect that one of the men was Divil Kumar. His connection to Ranjini, the timing of the crime, and his recent denial of paternity all added to the suspicion. However, the identity of the second man remained a mystery. Further details began to emerge when Ranjini's mother, Santama, shared a crucial piece of information. She recalled a man named Anil, whom she had met at the hospital around the time of the twins' birth. This man had often visited their home afterward, offering assistance and appearing helpful to both her and Ranjini. As the investigation deepened, the authorities confirmed Divil Kumar's identity and involvement in the case. Cross-referencing details led to a chilling discovery. The man who had introduced himself as Anil was not who he claimed to be. The police concluded that it was an alias. During the course of the investigation, it came to light that one of the suspects had used an ATM, a detail that would prove to be a key turning point. Bank records traced to Pathankot revealed the identity of the second individual as Rajesh, a colleague of Divil in the Indian Army. With this information, the circle around the suspects began to tighten. Though both men were initially questioned by the police, they managed to slip through the cracks. Shortly after, Divil absconded, effectively disappearing from official reach. As the investigation stalled, the army formally declared both Divil and Rajesh as deserters. With no leads and the suspects evading justice, the case gradually faded from the spotlight and went cold. In 2010, after 4 long years of inaction and growing frustration, Santama approached the Kerala High Court and pleaded for a renewed investigation. As a result, the case was officially handed over to the Central Bureau of Investigation. Unlike earlier phases, the CBI utilized more advanced tools and resources to pick up the trail that had gone cold. A major breakthrough came years later, driven by a combination of advanced artificial intelligence technology and relentless detective work. The CBI's Technical Intelligence Wing used AI-generated facial mapping to create potential matches based on old photographs of the suspects. These digitally aged images were then compared with available photos on social media platforms, a method that had rarely been used in earlier stages of the case. The strategy paid off when a close visual match was found online. The AI-generated images aligned closely with photos on social media, which had gone unnoticed for years. This digital footprint, once dormant, reignited hope for justice. The match was strong enough to prompt immediate action. The CBI's Chennai unit was alerted and quickly moved in to verify the findings. On January 4, 2025, the Central Bureau of Investigation arrested the 2 primary suspects in Puducherry. After nearly 2 decades in hiding, Divil and Rajesh were found living under false identities. 42-year-old Divil had assumed the name Vishnu, while 48-year-old Rajesh went by the alias Praveen Kumar. The men had managed to build entirely new lives, working as interior designers, and even marrying local school teachers, blending into the fabric of their adopted community without suspicion. It was revealed that Rajesh had manipulated Santama, Ranjini's mother, in the days leading up to the crime. Under the pretense of assisting her with official paperwork, Rajesh took her to the local Panchayat office, claiming he would help obtain birth certificates for the newborn twins. This deception was carefully planned, meant to remove Santama from the home and leave Ranjini and the babies vulnerable. While Santama was away, Rajesh returned to the house. Following their arrest, Dival and Rajesh were immediately taken into custody. The court remanded them to judicial custody, marking a crucial step in holding them accountable for the crimes. After nearly 2 decades, their family finally has a measure of closure. While the pain of their loss remains, the path to justice has begun. In the late 1880s, London's Whitechapel district was gripped by terror as a string of brutal crimes shook the city. 5 women's lives were ended in a way so savage. It left the world questioning the identity of the perpetrator for over a century. Known only as Jack the Ripper, the perpetrator's identity remained a chilling mystery, evading capture despite extensive investigations and police efforts. Between 1888 and 1891, the demises of 11 women were linked together under a single police investigation known as the Whitechapel cases in the Whitechapel district in the East End of London, England. These crimes shared various characteristics, including the method of attack and the social circumstances of the victims. 7 of the women had their throats slashed, while 4 were found with their bodies mutilated after demise, painting a horrifying pattern of violence in the area. Out of the 11 cases, 5 crimes committed between August and November of 1888 displayed such consistent and distinctive details that the investigators believed them to be the work of a single individual. This unknown perpetrator would later become famously known as Jack the Ripper. Despite the extensive police efforts to track down the perpetrator, the Ripper was never identified, and the mystery surrounding his identity endured for decades. Years after the crime ceased, documents surfaced that revealed internal suspicions within the police force. Among these was a reference to a man identified only as Kozminski. This name would eventually be connected to Aron Kozminski. The files indicated that several officials at the time had considered him a possible suspect, though no formal charges were ever brought against him. These suspicions remained buried in historical records for many years before drawing public attention. Aron Kozminski was born on September 11, 1865, in the town of Klodawa, located in Congress, Poland, then under the control of the Russian Empire. He was the son of Abram Józef Kozminski, who worked as a tailor, and his wife, Golda Lubnowska. Aron grew up in a Jewish family during a period of political unrest and societal tension within the region. Little is documented about Kozminski's early life in Poland, but it is believed that he may have been employed in a hospital setting. During the time that the crimes took place, Aron is believed to have been residing either on Providence Street or Greenfield Street. Both of these locations lie in close proximity to the crime scene, placing him within walking distance. In 1891, Aron was admitted to Colney Hatch Lunatic Asylum, following behavior that suggested severe mental illness. Among the symptoms noted were auditory hallucinations and a pattern of self-neglect, both of which pointed to a deteriorating psychological state. Prior to his admittance, he had reportedly threatened a woman, either his own sister or the sister of a witness involved in the process, with a knife. Another documented incident occurred in January 1892, when he brandished a chair at an asylum attendant. These 2 episodes stand as the only known records of violent conduct during his lifetime. While in the asylum, Aron showed a preference for speaking in Yiddish, his native language. This linguistic choice implied that his command of English was limited, raising questions about his ability to interact with English-speaking women in the manner Jack the Ripper was believed to have done. This language barrier has been cited by some as a significant factor against the likelihood of his involvement in the crimes. After spending 3 years at Colney Hatch, Aron was transferred on April 19, 1894, to Leavesden Asylum. During his time at Leavesden, he remained institutionalized, with no further recorded episodes of violence. His life quietly continued within the asylum's walls until his demise in 1919. In 2014, renewed attention was drawn to Aron when a DNA analysis was conducted on a shawl reportedly found at the crime scene of Catherine Edowis, the fourth victim in the series of crimes attributed to Jack the Ripper. The DNA evidence from the shawl was said to match genetic material from living descendants of both Catherine and Aron. The shawl, described as stained and bloodied, had allegedly been taken from the original crime scene and passed down through generations before surfacing at an auction. It was purchased by author Russell Edwards, who sought to validate its connection to the case. He commissioned Dr. Jari Luhalainen to conduct DNA testing in hopes of solving the mystery once and for all. Critics pointed out that the DNA findings had not undergone the necessary peer reviews typically required in scientific research, weakening their credibility in academic and forensic communities. In an effort to address these concerns, additional DNA testing was carried out in 2019 by Liverpool John Moores University and the University of Leeds. These follow-up studies reaffirmed that the genetic material found on the shawl matched the profiles of modern-day relatives of both Catherine and Aron. One of the main arguments against the DNA evidence is that the genetic markers identified are not unique. The mystery of Jack the Ripper may never be fully resolved, but the name of Aron Kozminski has sparked new debates and reopened old wounds. Whether he was truly the infamous perpetrator or simply a man whose name was tied to a chilling legacy, the case remains one of the most baffling and disturbing in criminal history. In 2025, a published paper titled Forensic Investigation of a Shawl Linked to the Jack the Ripper Crimes and published in the Journal of Forensic Sciences addresses these concerns and, most importantly, matches the DNA found at the crime scene to samples taken from living descendants of both Aron and Christina. Author Edwards said that a letter has been sent to the Attorney General requesting permission to go to the High Court and initiate the legal process to reopen the case. He said, "We now know the name, and we have placed the perpetrator at the crime scene. Now we want that to be public knowledge, though, accepted by the courts." A woman vanished after a phone call in February 1991, claiming to be in North Carolina. Despite no further contact, her disappearance remained a mystery for nearly 3 decades. On July 18, 1996, the police responded to a grim discovery in a wooded area near the Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. Human skeletal remains had been found, partially concealed by the dense foliage. The location, situated in a relatively secluded area, offered little in terms of immediate clues. The investigators secured the scene and began the process of collecting evidence, hopeful that the remains would soon be identified. The skeletal remains were transported to the Mecklenburg County Medical Examiner's Office for examination. After thorough analysis, the remains were confirmed to be those of a woman. The condition of the body suggested that it had been there for quite some time, and the medical examiner determined that her life was ended. However, due to the state of decomposition and lack of personal identification, authorities were left with more questions than answers. Detectives launched an investigation to try and uncover the identity of the woman. They employed all available conventional methods, including checking missing persons reports, dental records, and any identifying features that might link her to a known individual. Despite these efforts, they were unable to make a match, and the case eventually grew cold. After almost 3 decades, in 2022, the investigators revisited the decades-old case with renewed determination. The skeletal remains were sent to Raleigh for an osteological examination. Recognizing the potential of genetic technology, authorities partnered with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Foundation to pursue advanced DNA analysis. With their support, a portion of the woman's bones was sent to Othram. The first attempt at DNA extraction, however, was unsuccessful. The condition of the remains, having been exposed to the elements for years, had severely compromised the integrity of the genetic material. In 2024, the woman's bones were sent once again for DNA extraction. This time, experts utilized the most recent advancements in technology. The DNA data was uploaded into 2 consumer genealogy databases, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. To analyze the genetic leads, the CMPD Cold Case Unit partnered with Ramapo College of New Jersey's Investigative Genetic Genealogy Center. Their research quickly yielded a breakthrough in April 2025. The remains belonged to Betty Jean Benton. Detectives reached out to Betty's surviving family members to share the development and gather additional information. The family confirmed that they had not heard from Betty since the early 1990s, consistent with the timeline of the unidentified woman's last known whereabouts. To solidify the identification, a DNA sample was collected from one of Betty's relatives and compared to the profile from the remains. The match was confirmed. After nearly 30 years, the woman discovered in the wooded area near Bank of America Stadium was officially identified as Betty Jean Benton. Betty was born on February 27, 1954, in the state of Louisiana. Although she came into the world in the South, she spent the majority of her life in Chicago, Illinois. In February 1991, Betty reached out to her family. During that conversation, she informed them that she was in North Carolina. This would ultimately become the final time anyone in her family heard from her. There were no indications that anything was wrong during the call, but after that point, all contact ceased without explanation. Following the abrupt silence, concern within the family began to grow. They waited, hoping to hear from her again, but no further communication came. After months passed with no word, Betty was officially reported missing in 1992. No paper trail, no lease, employment, or identification has been discovered that links her to any specific location within North Carolina. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Cold Case Unit continues to investigate the circumstances of her demise.